Hi YouTube, this is Joe Calton with Calton Cutlery. You can find me on the web, caltoncutlery.com. So today we're going to go over an idea that's been brewing in my head now for about 6 months. I've tried to shoot the video several times. This video is a straight up rant as far as I'm concerned, but the times that I've shot the video prior to this, including 2 attempts earlier today, they've been too ranty. So we'll just try this time, see if it works. So the rant is pro knife sharpeners, okay? You get on YouTube, you type in knife sharpening or sharpening a knife or, how to sharpen or any of that kind of stuff. And you get an awful lot of pretty good videos, right? Hopefully you'll get a couple of my videos, showing you how to sharpen a knife with, a straight up old oil stone, right? But you'll also get videos where guys are saying, that you need a lot of fancy equipment to be able to sharpen your knives, right? And it just so happens that those guys sell that fancy equipment to sharpen your knives. Or, so there's a straight up, hey, we're going to tell you you don't know how to sharpen your knife so that we can sell you some gizmo or gadget or jig or something or other to hopefully make you sharpen your knife better, right? And some of those things can get expensive. I mean, from what I remember, Lansky, I hate to pick on Lansky, they seem like a pretty good outfit. I actually have a diamond stone from them that I picked up from Amazon or one of the sharpening places, just to check it out. This stuff right here, that's a regular old diamond stone. I really like that. But the jigs and things, to me, they seem like training wheels on a bicycle. That's something to kind of get you going. And then, once you learn a little bit more about sharpening and you kind of get the idea and everything, well, then those training wheels are kind of limited. In fact, somebody gave me a Lansky Sharpening Set a long time ago. It was the type that it clamped on the back of the blade, and then it had like wings that stuck up, and those wings had slots. And the stones were mounted to a rod, and the rod slipped into that slot, and then you were supposed to, move it like that, and it was at a fixed angle, and everything was supposed to be, work, and everybody was supposed to live happily ever after, right? Well, I really didn't care for it. First, it took a long time. Second of all, it only worked on a knife that was a certain length. Once you got too long, why then you had to reposition the jig, if I remember right. Second of all, those stones were, just itty-bitty stones, and they wore out quickly. And the whole thing was really dang expensive, too, if I remember right, like $60 or $70 for this jig that had an awful lot of limitations. Now, looking through, one of the, like this sharpeningsupplies.com catalog, this is a great outfit. I really like them. I've bought an awful lot of stones from them. But looking through there, they have got things that are like the Lansky system for hundreds of dollars. Like a lot of money to be able to sharpen your pocket knife. And that's just the jig type ones, with the clamp. Not to mention like the little motorized kitchen knife sharpeners and all that kind of stuff. And, honestly, they probably wouldn't sell it if it didn't work. But to me, it seems like that's the kind of stuff that you use, that you see on late night infomercials, right? Where people are like, hey, I'm sick and tired of buying brand new knives when mine get dull. And I think a big part of that comes from those videos where people are saying, hey, knife sharpening is really tough, so that you get to believe it, so that you go and buy their gizmo so that hopefully you can sharpen your own knife. So that's the first type of pro sharpener type videos that I have an issue with, right? The second type is the type of, they're the guys that are offering their services to sharpen your knife. So they're not going to sell you a guided sharpening system, that's guided by lasers and, scopes and all that kind of fancy stuff. They're selling you on their time and their ability, probably with that fancy, guided sharpening system, right? Now these guys, I think, are even more dangerous than the gadget sellers, because they're basically telling you that, hey, the reason that you can't sharpen a knife is because you can't hold a piece of steel at a fixed angle and move it across a stone. You know, I mean, that's basically what it boils down to, you know. Some of the guys I've seen, now first of all, I have never sent a knife to somebody to get sharpened, right? The very closest I've ever got to that was when I was first getting into straight razors, I bought a brand new Dovo 6.8, I think, full hollow razor from Lynn Abrams' shop. Okay, now part of the reason that I bought that razor from him was because I wanted to see what everybody was raving about with these whole professional edges on straight razors. I probably should have bought one that he hadn't honed, just to see the difference between a factory edge and then the one that Lynn had honed. The razor came to me, you know, it was brand new. I mean, you could see the seal, that he had broken the seal, taken the razor out, honed it, you know, maybe stropped it up, and then put it back in the box and then sent it to me. Now that razor did exactly what it was supposed to do. Okay, I pulled that razor out of the box without stropping it or anything. I went ahead and, you know, prepped my beard, lathered up, and shaved with it, and it worked beautifully. You know, I would not say any better or worse, you know, than the razors that I hone myself. But I wanted to see what a pro sharpened straight razor was like. That, and I also wanted a brand new Dovo straight razor to compare my straight razors to. So anyway, so in that case, I think Lynn was providing, you know, a fair service, and it wasn't like he was going out there saying, you know, hey, you can't sharpen, so you really ought to send all your stuff to me so that I can make a business out of doing something for you that you ought to be able to do yourself and then send it back to you. I've never met Lynn. The videos and stuff I've seen, he seems like a heck of a guy. You know, so I would call him like an exception. There's also another class of exception in those guys that are offering their sharpening services, and that's guys like Jason Stone, I think. Okay, that guy and guys that are like him, honestly, I think they are so into sharpening that they can't afford or justify having enough of their own knives to be able to justify the sharpening habit. Okay. Now, I don't mean that in any bad sort of way. It's actually a really good sort of way. It's kind of like guys that are like addicted to reloading, you know, where they anneal brass, anneal the necks on their rifle cartridge brasses, or rifle, you know what I mean. Turn necks, I mean, you know, measure or weigh all their brass, you know, to the 10th of a grain, you know, and sort brass. I mean, all that kind of stuff. I mean, the world needs those type of guys that are so into something that, you know, that they just study it that much, right? So guys like that, I think, you know, they probably charge for their time sharpening your knife, but that's kind of a side gig. You know, they just want more knives to sharpen so that they can play with different steels, different stones, all that kind of stuff. And offering a sharpening service, you know, fits in really well with that, okay? I know Jason Stone's got videos on sharpening, okay? So it's not like he's saying, hey, you can't hold a chunk of steel on a rock at a fixed angle long enough to make a sharp knife. He's saying, hey, listen, this is how you sharpen. This is how I sharpen, so that you can try it yourself. Now, if you don't want to, then you can send your knife to me. I'll sharpen it up for you and send it back to you. That's kind of an honest sort of a business model as far as I'm concerned. So, but the other side of that are the guys that are saying, hey, you can't sharpen. And instead of teaching you how to sharpen, I'm going to make 20 or 50 bucks off of you every time you dull your pocket knife, and make you think that the only way to get a sharp knife is to send it to me for me to sharpen it and send it back to you. Those guys, and they know who they are. You know, these are the type of guys that have got no other marketable skills other than, you know, preaching fear, you know, of a dull knife and saying, hey, I'll come in and save you, and they can sharpen a knife. Well, sharpening a knife is an awful lot like tying your shoelaces, you know. I mean, you just start doing it every day, and then the next thing you know, you can sharpen, and, you know, your knife goes dull, you just whip out the stone, sharpen it up, and away you go. You know, it's just business as normal. This is where it's kind of close to getting into too ranty and, you know, not ranty enough. But yeah, those guys right there, you really have to watch out for them, okay? I mean, and they'll take it to extremes. I mean, I watched part of a video the other day where the guy was obviously a pro knife sharpener, right? And it looked to me like he was using one of those laser guided, you know, fancy systems. And he pulled out a pocket knife, you know, that he just pulled out of a box. And there's some lint and trash on there. And he said, hey, look at this this close view, right? And it showed a knife edge that had been pretty much wrecked by a buffing machine, right? I mean, somebody had held it up to a buffing machine for far too long, and they had seriously convexed it, polished it up. I mean, it would probably take hair off your arm. It did look a little bit rough, and I don't know, I can't remember if he said it was sharp or not. But he said that he was going to spend hours fixing that edge. Hours fixing a knife edge. Heck, you can grind the knife in, you know, 30 minutes, you know, or 10 minutes, you know, just kind of depends on the knife and how good you are at grinding. But he was going to spend hours on this thin little bitty ribbon of steel from here to there. I don't know about you, but if some guy tells me he's going to spend hours fixing a sharpening or a pocket knife that had been completely destroyed by a buffer, I'm not too sure I'd let him touch my pocket knife at all, right? So anyway, yeah. So we're going to call that good for the rant part, right? Now, to get past the rant part, okay, sharpening knives is really, really easy, right? You guys have seen me sharpen tons of knives. In fact, we'll go ahead and do one right now. Can't remember if this was the video that I went over, because like I said, this is the third time I've tried to shoot this video, but these are the knives that I'm working on right now, and they're almost done. This is a 5.5 inch Wabocho out of 1095 steel that's differentially hardened. You see the hardening line right here, and a maple burl handle with a red and black micarta bolster, right? Now you'll probably see, you know, there's a little line of white up in there. That's the wax that I used to, you know, to finish out the handle. And that'll get cleaned up. So usually I sharpen these. Well, this is where I'm at right now. So I'll go ahead and sharpen these. Once they get sharpened, then I'll come back and I'll go ahead and detail the knife, you know, polish up the blade a little bit, get rid of the oxides, even out the finish. Go back over the handle again real quick, and then we will do, you know, I'll write down the specs, you know, the measurements of the edge, 1/4 inch behind the edge, the spine, the weight, all that kind of stuff. And then, you know, if they're orders, then they get emailed to the fella who ordered them. And then if he likes it, he can buy it, and the rest of them end up going on the website, right? So, well, we can look at what I've got right now. This is a pretty cool batch. There's that 5-inch Wabocho. It's got a little bit of activity there in the hardening line, which is kind of cool. These are 52-100 Carter pattern neckers. They're also differentially hardened. They've got all the oxides from the etching still on the blade. The reason I do that is when I go ahead and form the Kydex sheaths for these, it has a tendency to kind of scuff up the blade a little bit, and by leaving the oxides from the etching on there, it'll kind of protect the blade for a little bit until we get everything finished up, and it just works best that way. But these are maple burl that I stabilized here in the shop, and desert ironwood for the handle on those. And then over here we've got another 5.5-inch Wabocho in stabilized curly maple, which this stuff is, it looks pretty cool. I kind of like the natural maples. So it's not dyed or anything, but it is stabilized, so that's kind of cool. And then Nakiri's, one of them in the maple burl, differentially hardened, etched, you know, so you can see the hardening line. And I think that's cottonwood. Yeah, stabilized cottonwood burl, which is some pretty cool stuff. And it's also differentially hardened and everything. So these knives right here have been sharpened already. And these knives over here have. So we'll go ahead and sharpen one, and then I'll keep babbling while we're sharpening. Now, first of all, you know, these were ground and then hand sanded. So they're fairly thin, you know, but they're definitely not sharp yet. I mean, they might cut. Here, let's grab a index card. Yeah, see there, I mean, the geometry's there, but they're not sharp yet, right? So let's go ahead and fix that. So what we got here is we've got a Norton crystalline coarse fine, the jumbo model, right? So this is a ginormous stone. Well, I mean, it's freaking ginormous, right? You know, it'll probably take me a decade to wear this stone out, right? So what we're going to do is, you know, well, you know, hold our knife about like this. Okay, we've got a burr up in here, not quite to one down in here. Now when I ground this one, it's a little bit thicker at the heel than it is up at the point. So okay, so we've got our edge shaped now, right? We are either at a burr or very close to a burr, you know, along the entire edge. That's what we use our coarse stone for, right? So what I have set up here today is, yeah, you should be able to see it from there. So you got the coarse stone over here. Now these, all three of these stones are, you know, two-sided, right? But I just I put them all out so that I can go from the coarse to a fine to a fine India, and then they're done, right? That way I don't have to keep cleaning the stones and swap them back and forth, right? So, oh, and I'm sharpening with, this is also a Norton crystalline coarse fine. It's an older one. I know I've had this stone for 15, 20 years, something like that, and it was, I bought it used at a garage sale, and it was dished out really bad, so it's been around a while. And then I'm using mineral oil as a lubricant. So what we're doing on the fine side here is removing the scratches from the coarse side, and then refining our edge. And the places where we didn't quite come to a burr on the coarse side, we're going to go ahead and finish bringing them to a burr on the fine side. Now that coarse stone, I want to say, is like a 100 grit-ish edge. The fine side is, I believe, like a 320 for the crystalline. And then this fine India over here, I think the fine side is like a 320 or a 400, somewhere around there. Okay, we're almost got it. There's just a spot right up in here. There we go. Okay. So now that we came to a burr, or mostly a burr on the coarse side, now we came to a burr and polished out these scratches, came to a burr on both sides on this stone, right? So now what we're doing is we're just kind of smoothing things up and lightening up that burr and preparing to remove it. Now remember, this is the first edge that this knife has ever gotten. So it's not like I'm just tuning an edge up here or anything, right? We're establishing the very first edge ever. Okay? So now what we're going to do is put a little bit more oil on. And we're going to stone strop a little bit. I've been playing with different, different orders now that I'm making the switch from the diamond stones straight back to the normal wet stones. So we're going to stone strop a little bit, and what that's going to do is really weaken up that burr and get it nice and light and get it prepared to get sheared off on the fine India. Now, the amount of pressure that I'm using at this stage is pretty much just enough pressure to get the stone to cut. Okay? So if you're working on like diamond stones will cut with less pressure than even these silicon carbide stones, right? But the idea is still the same. Use just enough pressure to get the stone to cut. Let's move this stone over here so that you can see it a little bit better. All right, so now what we're going to do, our burr is almost completely gone. We got a little bit more of it up here in the point area. So we're going to go ahead and shear our burr. So if our normal, well, you've seen this in other videos, but if you're if this is flat, this right here was the normal sharpening angle. Okay, this is going to be the angle that we shear the burr off at. Now on these India stones, you're still using very, very light pressure, but it's just a hair more pressure than what you would use on, say, a DMT diamond stone, right? A little bit more right there. There we go. So this is the first edge that this knife has ever gotten, right? And it's popping here. And listen to that. Now this is 3x5 cardstock, so it's not quite as impressive as, say, newspaper or anything. So now that knife is ready to get cleaned up, and specs and pictures and all that kind of fun stuff, right? So what was that total? I don't know, we're at 23 minutes right now, and I think we started sharpening at 20. So 3 minutes total to go from no edge at all to taking hair off my arm and cutting a 3x5 note card, right? Okay, now if you were to, I'll hold you here for a little bit. Okay, so this stone right here, now granted it's huge, right? Well, I think this stone right here was only like $60 or maybe 80, somewhere around there. I know you can get the 2x8 version of this for like 30, and that's here in town. I think if you get them off Amazon, they're like 20-ish, somewhere around there. This is the same stone, only bigger, right? So if you were on a budget, if you got the, well, here, I'll just get the normal, here. Okay, you could get this stone right here for $20 off of Amazon, right? Shipped, okay? And that stone is the same stone as this, only smaller. Okay, it's also the same stone as this, only smaller. You still got a coarse side and a fine side. The fine India, you don't really need that one. You could do the same thing on this one, you know, so that one stone right there in the home base shop would be the equal of all three of these, right? It's just, you know, I'm doing this as like a production type thing, so I spend time to get 3 stones out, and then it saves me time over the course of sharpening 10 knives, right? So that stone right there would do all your pocket knives, kitchen knives, everything else, right? Scissors, all that kind of stuff. Now, to maintain this stone, in other of my videos, you'd need a piece of plate glass and the silicon carbide loose powder, right? That's to maintain this stone and to keep it flat. $20. This right here was bought in town at one of the hobby shops, so you spend more money there for $14. I think you can get that off Amazon for like $10, right? Piece of plate glass, find them on the side of the road. Heck, even go to a glass shop. That shouldn't cost more than about 10 bucks. Now, if you want to get into finer edges, okay, like let's say you're getting into shaving with a straight razor, all right? This stone is not going to give you a fine enough edge to shave with comfortably, okay? I mean, you can shave with it, but it might not be the most comfortable thing ever. All right, so there you would want probably one of these 3 types of stones here, right? Now, just one of them. You don't need all 3 of these, okay? A Arkansas stone from Dan's. There's Dan's name and everything. I want to say I got this off of Amazon also for like 70 or 80 bucks. It's got the soft Arkansas, which is rated at about a 6 to an 800 grit edge, and the black Arkansas, which, you know, depends on who you talk to and what you have it prepped at. You know, I don't know, 4,000 to 8,000 grit, something like that. But you can, and I have shaved with edges off of just this stone on a straight razor, right? Something in the same class, but a water stone would be this King, 1,000, 6,000. This stone right here, the HT65. You can pick them up off of Amazon. I want to say like 30 bucks. I just bought 2 more of them. One of them to do some testing on, the other one to give to a friend that's getting into straight razor shaving. You know, something like that will keep you shaving for a long time. That, along with a strop with some chromium oxide paste. If you'd rather go something a little bit larger, you can see this one's just a little bit larger overall, and a little bit nicer stone is these Sujeros. Now, this is a it's an older version, and I believe that they have discontinued it, but the Cerex line, I think, is the newer version of this, right? This stone, I think I gave like 60 or 70 for it, but it was at a woodworking place, so there we go, 68.44. But it was at a woodworking place, and you know, they always mark everything up there. So I think the new Cerex ones you can get for, you know, 70 bucks or so. And then the last thing, if you're doing straight razor shaving and you really want a nice finishing stone that is a man-made stone, these the Nanawa, this is a Nanawa 12,000 grit stone. Now, this is only like, it's not even a ½ inch thick, I don't think, right? And so they move an awful lot when you, they don't really flex, but as the stone gets wet and dries out, it will kind of sort of flex like that, right? So a friend of mine showed me, or told me to mount it to a piece of granite with automotive body putty, and that stops all that. So something like that. If you wanted to have something nice to flatten these stones out, this one they discontinued these also. This is the Smith's 325 coarse interrupted stone. Now this one is huge, which is why I used to buy them. It's a 11.5 inch stone, something like that. And these, once they get worn out, sharpening knives are perfect for lapping your water stones. And I know it's just a 325 grit finish, but you know, these stones, they slurry so fast that all you're doing with this is just keeping them flat. Okay, you're not really prepping the surface any. So anyway, so, you know, I mean, if you were to do, you know, based on personal preferences and everything, if you were to buy, you know, your $20 Norton crystalline, regular oil stone, and then, you know, the King 1000, 6000 grit water stone, you know, $20, $30, and then $20 in, you know, silicon carbide powder and plate glass to be able to maintain these, you know, you would have a complete, well, and a strop, and I would say, you know, 60, 70 bucks for a strop. You know, you'd be able to do anything from 100 grit edge all the way up to that chromium oxide powders like 30,000 grit, okay? So anything from 100 grit to a 30,000 grit, really easy, and for probably about the same amount of money as you would spend on paying somebody to sharpen 2 pocket knives, I would guess. You know, I can't imagine those guys are cheap, especially when you factor in mailing a knife to them and then them sharpening it and then mailing it back to you. That and a little bit of practice. I mean, you know, I've shot, I don't know, 40 knife sharpening videos or so. Every single one of them is, you know, using a simple sharpening stone to sharpen and maintain your knives. Like I said before when I was talking about, you know, pay attention to why the guy is talking about sharpening. I can't remember if I said it in this video or not, but hey, you know, I'm a knife maker, so my job is to sell you knives, right? Well, to make the knives and to sell the knives. Okay. YouTube, you know, they give me a couple of bucks every month, you know, for having these videos up there, so there's that. These stone manufacturers are not giving me any you know, kickbacks or free stones or anything like that. I just like these stones an awful lot, and I really don't like dull knives. So that's where I'm at in teaching you how to sharpen pocket knives. I don't like dull knives. You know, I make the videos, and so, you know, that's a little bit of advertisement for me. And I just want you guys to enjoy a sharp knife. And, you know, the best way to have a sharp knife is to be able to sharpen it yourself. So anyway, so, yeah, thanks for listening to me rant about, you know, the pro knife sharpening guys. The guys that are trying to make a buck off of you, you know, not knowing how to sharpen, or trying to make a buck off selling you a whole bunch of fancy equipment that you really don't need to sharpen your pocket knife. So again, this is Joe Calton with Calton Cutlery. You can find me on the web, caltoncutlery.com. Thanks for listening to me rant on this one, guys. Now that I got that off my chest, I think I feel better. And we will catch you next time.